Check, check. Yeah, good evening. It's the end of the day. It's been a long whole day for everybody, I can see. But welcome to this session. We have a power-packed panel to discuss something which is often conflicting. Because every time we talk about urbanization, we say keep nature aside, right? We talk about nature, we say, oh, we've got to look for nature somewhere. You can't find it in an urban space. So it's going to be an interesting session. We have a power-packed panel. I'm going to introduce the panel one by one so that they can come up here. I want to first introduce Mafila. Mafila Richard has been part of the GSTC system since 2011 from the Botswana Tourism Organization. They were early adopters of the GSTC destination system. And he's very, very experienced because he worked in the Okanagan belt, which became a Ramsar site eventually. And because of the whole experience he's had with BTO, that experience we've translated to destinations, all over the world. So, can you put your hands together to welcome Mafila? Next, I want to introduce Agustini Rahayu. Ayu. I'm going to call you Ayu, right? Excellent. She's the Director of Strategic Review at the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia. She's been a leading voice of tourism as far as Indonesia is concerned, with over 2 decades of experience. Now, she was also instrumental in developing Indonesia's sustainable tourism policies. Now, Indonesia, for some of you who would know, has come a long way in all that they wanted to do from a tourism perspective and from a sustainable tourism perspective. Of course, we'll learn more about it. So, Ayu, welcome to the stage. I want to then introduce Oudad. I just discovered that he's my cousin from Lebanon. Oudad is a society and head of the Municipal Service Office in the coastal town of Gouna, which is a flagship of the Oroscon development. This is in Egypt. Like we say, if you live in Cairo, like we were discussing, you age in 1 year. But if you live in a place like Gouna, which is a small, sweet little place, you don't age at all. So he's not aged. So it's a large development with over 2,500 work staff and about 25,000 people here. He has a lot of experience working in the Middle East. So please welcome Oudad. Last but not the least, Rohaya. Rohaya was going to make a grand entrance later, but we got her earlier. She's the Vice President of Sustainability Solutions of the Mandai Wildlife Group, and she's been in the environmental space for over 3 decades. She was part of the Ministry of Science in Singapore. She's done a lot of work in the space of air quality and water quality, and she was part of a lot of the UNFCCC discussions. If those of you know what those discussions are, they're usually contentious. So she's quite an expert in finding a balance between everything, like we're going to try and find the balance between nature and urban systems. Please welcome Avana. I just calculated, all 5 of us here put together, I didn't want to say every time, 2 decades experience, 3 decades experience, because that is what it is. Collectively on the stage today, I calculated we have 100 years of experience, which is something else, right?
Really?
So that's a nice thing to start off with. Now, this session is going to be about how nature and urbanization can come together. If any of you followed the 2024 Wildlife Report, the Living Planet report from WWF, it highlights some startling facts. 73% of wildlife populations over the last 50 years have disappeared. Lots of it has disappeared because of human activity, obviously, right? Tourism is a part of it. But urbanization is been one of the biggest factors WWF has realized that has led to the decline of biodiversity globally. Now, there is a certain inevitability when it comes to urbanization. We hear in every country, people from the rural space coming to the urban space, and urban sprawls spreading. Now, this is inevitable. So none of us are going to fight that, right? I always say, if you can't fight something, embrace it to figure out what you can do with that. So we're not going to fight the urbanization, but there are things that we can do within the urban models. So how do we adapt to it? How do we get the urban models to adapt to ensure that they're nature friendly? Of course, we are sitting in Singapore. Yeah, it's a garden city where you have trees everywhere, which is a phenomenal model, and I think we'll hear more about it, from Rahayu later. But we also want to look at nature and urban coming together beyond just green walls and trees everywhere, right? That's the obvious solution. We want to try and move away from the cliche as much as we can to see how can we truly integrate it. When I say integrated at a systemic level, what do we need to do in our urban sprawl? So what do we need to do to integrate sort of nature in there? Now, there is also the intersection between livelihoods and natural systems, right? Urbanization is all about livelihoods also. So this intricate balance that we need to achieve between all these systems is the challenge for the world that is moving towards rapid urbanization. How do we handle this challenge? How do we, first of all, embrace this challenge? And what is it that we need to do with this challenge in our hands is what this Power Pack panel will do. We have, like I said, very, very experienced people. So without much ado, I'm going to start with Mafila. He's going to show us a few slides, and then we'll have a discussion, after all the speakers finish. Mafila, stage is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here after such a long day. My name is Mafila Richard Malesu. I was working for Botswana Tourism Organization, as he said, until end of August. So I've been working there for the last 18 years. And before working there, I worked in Maung, which is the capital of the Okavango Delta, since 2021. So, which means before going to Botswana Tourism Organization, I was working in the development of the Okavango Delta Ramsar Site Management Plan. So, because of the uniqueness of the area, I would start first by talking about Okavango Delta Ramsar Site as a case study for what really taught us about the management. I've been participating in GSTC activities since 2011, and one of the things that GSTC did was when the first adopter program started for this GSTC destination criteria, we took up the exercises through the Okavango Delta to pilot. And that is where I got to understand the management guided by the destination criteria. How best can we manage a destination? So that is why Okavango Delta, as an early adopter, I used it here as a case study, whereby the place started off as, it was listed as a Ramsar site, and then it was later listed as a World Heritage Site, and with all these management plans. Something that I also want to highlight about those listings is, sometimes they look appealing, but if you don't keep them, you run the risks of being red listed. And if you are red listed, it's worse than not listing at all. So the moment you list, be careful and be committed to make sure that you are going to do the compliance. That alone really keeps the destination in check. Because sometimes people will say, hey, if GSTC has a criteria, but what really can compel you? But the moment you go to listing, then that you should know better that you are required to take that management responsibility. So what I wanted to show, the reason why I also wanted to use Okavango Delta Ramsar site, it's also because it is part of what is called CASA. CASA is Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier National Park. The CASA area, it's a joint management through 5 countries: Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Zambia. Reason being, the natural as is. Wildlife is moving around the CASA. You don't have what you call permanent resident elephants or permanent resident buffaloes or lions. Those animals, they move around. One day they are in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe, the next day they are in Zimbabwe, I think in Zambia, and the next day the other day they are found into all the way up to Angola. Because through research, when they get collared, the movement shows that these animals, they move. They don't know of any border, because besides that, we have borders which are not fenced. So the animals move around. So to them, for you to manage them successfully, there has to be a collaboration between these countries. So now, from the CASA, because CASA also has a program that holds the countries accountable jointly to show how we manage, and at the same time not forgetting the socio-economic. The socio-economic as in the people who are living in that area. And as a result, because of tourism, we should understand that around that area, there is Victoria Falls, where people go for the falls in Zimbabwe, and the falls are also in Zambia. So you find that the towns of Victoria Falls and the towns of Livingston developed before Kasane. Kasane was a smaller town. Now Kasane is also trying to match, because if the tourists arrive, how do they get there? So they either fly through Vic Falls, or they fly to Livingston, or they fly to Kasane. But Kasane is still having a smaller airport compared to those two, because those two has already established long-haul connectivity. See, now you see how the urban also link, because for the tourists to also go and see those wildlife, they have to arrive in the urban cities. And because of the limitations, like in Chome National Parks, you wouldn't expect many lodges in there, in camps. So most of the lodges are based in Kasane, which is a town adjacent to Chome National Park. And then also some of the tourists from Livingston, they come to Botswana for day trips to go to the Chome National Park and then go back to Livingston. The same as in Botswana, some tourists go to Victoria Falls for day trips and come back. So you find that people are moving in and out. So the urban is using the product, and the communities around, including the lodges, they also depend on the urban. Because if there are no urban centers, where would they get their supplies? So now you see, this is a vicious cycle. So the other thing also, because the communities around are also affected by wildlife. So now we have what we call community-based natural resource management, whereby the communities now, for them to be able to live side by side with the natural and the wildlife, they also have to have some benefit. So this is just what I was talking about. The emphasis is just to show that at Kazungula, we have what we call the quadripoint, whereby the four countries meet. And there's also a bridge that also links the two countries of Botswana and Zambia. Because to Zimbabwe, you can drive. But to cross to Zambia, you need a bridge. Otherwise, we used to use a ferry, which was very inconvenient, especially because it's not only saving that area alone. All goods from all the way from South Africa crosses through Zambia into the upper parts of Africa, all the way up to Democratic Republic. So that urban set also links the economy of our African. So hence Kazungula is known as the transit hub. And then because of the management, some of the things that have been adopted is use of e-mobility. Use of e-mobility is part of managing that, because there are a lot of game drive vehicles that are used by the urban, by the lodges, and they cause pollution. So now if they use e-mobility, it's one way of reducing emissions from the vehicles and at the same time reducing noise. Because if you use these electric boats and electric grain drive vehicles, they kind of make less noise, they're silent. And then the other issue that we also have to be aware of is the human-wildlife conflict. Because the people who are living around, not everybody is living in the urban, as in town of Kasane or Kasungul. The people who are living in the villages around the natural also have problems because the animals don't know the difference between natural vegetation and vegetation and a place that somebody has using as a field. So they eat and they also endanger the people. So hence the communities are also given some concessions to realize some benefits out of living side by side with the wildlife. And then the other thing is the communities also are using cultural and heritage to promote tourism. One of the highlights of this area was the Seperu, it's a folk dance. And it was listed under UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage that needs urgent safeguarding. So you see, there is that benefit now because that cultural aspect of cultural tourism is also known and listed and protected, which is part of management. And about Kasane and Kazungula as the access point, I think I've already touched that one. And then this is also to show the importance of Kasa. In this particular case, I highlighted elephants because the elephants have got impact. Ghana, the natural by itself, as much as we want to conserve the natural, we should also be on the lookout because the natural by itself can also harm the environment. Because imagine if we have 227,000 elephants in Kasa and 131 of them are in Botswana, what impact is that doing? So I believe this gives a picture of how the coexistence between the environment and the natural coexists and needs to be managed. I believe that for now it's enough for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I mean, we talk about, yes. No, we talk about the conflict of nature and urban systems in one little place. And here you have 4 countries coming together. Wow, it's like the problems multiplied into 4. Thank you very much. I thought that was a fantastic expose for us. Now from there, we will go to Singapore. Ayu, if you can sort of take us through what you have to...
Right. Okay.
Am I going the right sequence?
No.
No? Okay. Sorry, Ayu is next, right?
No.
Who's next? Which presentation is next? Yeah, I've got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ayu, yes, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry, not Singapore. Singapore is going to come later.
Oh, that's Singapore.
Oh, this is
Oh,
Singapore.
we come to Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'd be Singapore. Go ahead.
Hi.
We cannot
Hi.
see here.
Right. Let me see, can I see that? Doesn't seem to work there.
It should show on the screen, yeah. It's not showing on the screen?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah, there you are. Okay.
All right. Hi. A very good afternoon to everyone. And I would like to thank GSTC for including me into this esteemed panel this afternoon. So I'd like to talk about management and coexistence of urban and nature systems. And I think this is a very important topic for all of us. As Ram mentioned just now, right, the Living Planet report states that the rate of species loss has gone up to 73% within the last 50 years. That's really a lot, and that's really very alarming, and it's all due to human actions. And also yesterday, I also attended a talk, and they also talk about the world population, right? Right now it stands at 8.1 billion, and it's going to increase further to about 10 billion by 2050, and 9.6 billion by 2050, and continue to 10.2 billion in the year 2100, right? And this is alarming because as we have more and more population, then there will be a need for land. And that's when you start to encroach into the forest ecosystems, and then there'll be this human-animal conflict. So I want to share this so that we can understand how we in Mandai try to manage this coexistence with urban and nature systems. So first of all, I'd like you to get to know a bit more about Mandai, right? We are not just an organization that operates the wildlife parks, the Singapore Zoo, the famous night safari, bird paradise, and river wonders. But we are also an institution that cares for the planet, cares for nature and wildlife. And we are custodians of the Mandai Wildlife Reserve. That's where we are situated, all the parks. That's the precinct where we operate in. And we want to be to serve as the window into the wild, right? So we want to connect our visitors to wildlife so that they have this connection and this empathy and compassion for wildlife, enough for them to actually protect them. Therefore, our purpose is to build a world where people and wildlife thrive together, and we do this by creating meaningful connections and experiences that inspire people to protect nature and wildlife. And to date, we care for about 21,000 animals in our parks, comprising 1,000 species, 25% of which are classified as threatened. And we are also members of important institutions like the World Association of Zoos and Aquarium and the Southeast Asia's Association of Zoos and Aquarium. We are also accredited as a zoological institution under YAZA, which is the European Association of Zoos and Aquarium, and as well as Zoo and Aquarium Association of Australasia. So being members of these ensures that we uphold the high standards that are required in terms of animal care and welfare. And other than operating the wildlife parks, we also serve as one of the centers where rescued animals are brought to Mandai, because we have vets who will treat them and rehabilitate them and send them back to the wild if it's found to be suitable, right? So last year we rehabilitated about 1,100 animals that were rescued from the wild. Right. In terms of sustainability, we of course subscribe to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and out of these 17 goals, we are focused on 8 that are where we can actually have the most direct impact in terms of our business and our operations. We have a sustainability strategy, right? And it comprises 3 pillars: sustainable operations, biodiversity protection, and sustainability advocacy. But these 3 pillars have this overarching goal of protecting nature and supporting a low-carbon future. So it has this biodiversity and climate change that are intertwined within this goal, this pillar. And today I will focus on the middle pillar, the green one, which is on biodiversity protection, because we are talking about management and coexistence of urban and nature systems. Right, so I would like to focus on from development to operations. See, when we build our parks, right, when we operate the parks, we don't start the sustainability journey from the point of time where we operate the parks. It should start well before that, right? We should start from the point of time where we construct, where we do the construction, right? So I will cover responsible developer as well as operating sustainably. Okay, this is what we have the Mandai Rejuvenation Project. You would have heard that recently, just about 2 days ago, we announced that we are going to open the Rainforest Wild Asia in March. And we also will be opening the Mandai Rainforest Resort in the first half of next year. So there's still quite a lot of construction going on if you were to come down to Mandai Wildlife Reserve. You can see some construction going on there. So this is an overview of Mandai Wildlife Reserve. It is a precinct that covers an area of about 126 hectares, and this is where you can find all our parks. Right? The existing parks like Night Safari, River Wonders, Singapore Zoo are within the southern part. And then we have the Bird Paradise that opened its doors on 8 May last year. And so the rainforest are all coming up. And other than that, we also have an indoor, nature-themed indoor attractions. And within this part, you can see that it's surrounded by water. This is what we call the Upper Seletar Reservoir, which is a drinking water reservoir. So this is a catchment area. And then after that, you have the Central Catchment Nature Reserve, which is an area, which is a nature reserve that's full of biodiversity. So therefore, when we do our construction, we have to be careful because we are surrounded by these sensitive areas like nature reserve and the drinking water reservoir. So because of that, right, when we started it off with an environmental impact assessment, right, so a comprehensive one was done to evaluate the significance of the potential impact that it can have on the surrounding biodiversity, surrounding environment. And then there was a lot of dialogues done with the nature groups, with the government, with the IHLs, and arising from that, there are a few considerations that are taken, that are adopted when we plan for this construction. So some of them include connectivity for wildlife. That means it's important to have connectivity for the wildlife species around there, establishment of buffer zones, tree protection zones, and construction and operation hours. Right, so when we build, we are limited to a certain time. So we can only build from 7 a.m. to about 7 p.m. We can't, or 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. We can't go further than that because of the wildlife around us. And I visited other places where I went to stay at the Rainforest Resort, and I can hear construction piling at night, in the night. And it is within a wildlife area. So it's kind of, it reminds me, that, yeah, we are doing good here, that we have to protect this area. And that also means that you don't have bright lights at night. So this shows some of the key considerations. So if you see the mustard-colored areas there, those are what we call our buffered areas, right? And this serves as a cushion to cushion the wildlife against from the impact of the development as well as the operations. And then we have a Mandai Wildlife Bridge, the blue color, that connects the two forests that was separated 60 years ago. So we take this opportunity to stitch back the forest. And then we also take the opportunity to also restore the degraded areas. So these are some of the environmental management and monitoring plans that we have. And there's a requirement for the contractors to engage dedicated environmental managers. And they are supported by ecologists, arborists, and environmental control officers. And there are also tree protection zones. So we identify a few, there are important trees. This is also in consultation with the national parks. And then that's where we build the tree protection zones that they are not supposed to touch or cut. Yeah? And this is some of the wildlife, the measures that we have taken to provide connectivity. There's a civet cat over there, and there's a kolugo pole that stands in place of a tree, because kolugo, you can see the kolugo down there. Yeah, it glides from tree to tree, and where there are no trees, we put that kolugo pole in its place. Okay. Then, so this is the wildlife bridge that I mentioned. So it was opened sometime in December 2019, and since then we have actually planted more trees, more native trees to encourage native species to come and cross the bridge. And we have been successful in attaining an average canopy cover of more than 85%. So these are some of the wildlife photos that we have captured through the camera traps. And other than that, during the operation stage also, we continue to do ecological monitoring, right? So there's also long-term flora monitoring. So these are all the camera traps that we have installed. And we also work with Mandai Nature to actually carry out joint biodiversity surveys within the area itself. And this is actually what we call a bamboo mapping survey, where we have the bamboo beds. So there are a lot of bamboo trees within the area, the precinct, and when we do our maintenance for safety purposes or for animal welfare, before we cut the tree, we have to ensure that there are no bamboo beds there. And if we find any bamboo beds there, then they are translocated to another place, right? So this is some of the measures that we take in terms of sensitivity to the wildlife. And then this is the last part of my slides. So, as I mentioned, we are within the Mandai Wildlife Reserve, and it is home to a few native species, and we have some focus species there, like our Sunda kolugo, the green tree snail, the pangolins, the bamboo bats, right? And we carry out regular surveys to understand the status of these species and then intervene where necessary. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Wow. I think you've taken sensitivity in urbanization to another level altogether, right? It's very rare that we find urbanization which becomes as sensitive as you all have done, in terms of making pathways for the animals to cross. I think that's a fantastic way of how we can truly integrate nature and urban systems. Thank you for that. Excellent. Now we'll move on to Indonesia, and Ayu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So it's perfect. After Aya, Ayu speaks. Yeah, she called herself Aya, and as for me, it's Ayu. So yeah, for Indonesia, my shared information might be a little different with the other speakers, because I promise you that it's not gonna be too formal. It will be casual and
Yes.
and very short presentation. So I work for Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, Republic of Indonesia, and today I will share about the tourism macro perspective about how to manage our tourism destination in Indonesia. So here we can see that coexisting with nature, it's not that easy, as you already know that Indonesia is the biggest archipelago in the world. And maybe we can start by seeing this, looking the unique landscape of Indonesia. Indonesia faced a unique set of challenges as well as opportunities when it comes to tourism management, especially regarding the sustainability issues. Because sustainability is not only about environment sustainability, but it's also about an ecosystem. And actually for Indonesia, sustainability is a resiliency. So yeah, because like you can see here, the figure, Indonesia is, like I said, it's the biggest archipelago country in the world with over 5 million square kilometers of sea area and population of around 275 million people, representing over 1,300 ethnic groups. And we have 55 national parks with, and also we have, this is very challenging, but also, again, it's an opportunity. We have 127 active volcanoes that gives Indonesia an earthquake, like 2,000, earthquake per year.
Wow.
So it's challenging, but yeah, it's also an opportunity regarding the sustainability, environment sustainability. This uniqueness also presents challenge, of course, and the dynamic environment requires us to be especially mindful about sustainable practices. Like I said, sustainability is actually the ecosystem. We must balance the economic benefit of tourism with the need to protect our natural heritage for future generation. Why I said about nature? Because in Indonesia, tourism, actually the top 3 portfolio is, the first top 3 portfolio is natural tourism. So it's based on nature. So every wildlife, we have a lot like what you have in Africa, of course. But this dynamic environment again requires that we have to manage this very carefully. So, well, I would say that nature and culture actually at the heart of Indonesia's tourism appeal. That's not London. With actually that's the old town of in Semarang in central Java, but you can see here that it's a place where you can find just about anything from volcanoes to beach, and then rainforest to coral reefs, and you can even find snow in the very end of eastern part of Indonesia. We have Puncak Jaya Wijaya in Papua, that you can find eternal snow there, like what you can find in Mount Titlis in Switzerland. So yeah, basically you can find just about anything in Indonesia. So Indonesia offers a truly diverse portfolio of attraction, of course, with this rich diversity, as you can see here from the pictures. Our appeals lies primarily in our stunning natural landscape and vibrant cultural heritage. So from the towering volcanoes and 127 active volcanoes, like you can see in the news recently, we have an active volcanoes eruption in East Nusa Tenggara that caused several international flight cancellation as well as domestic flight and cancellation. So, but yeah, Indonesia is always thriving, survive with all these challenges as well as the opportunities. So again, we recognize importance of protecting this assets, not just for the sake of tourism, of course, but for the well-being of our nations and future generations. So it's more, wide than just thinking about tourism only, but for the future generation. Okay, so anyway, Indonesia tourism metric matters to calibrate where we are. So we have to have a global recognition, right, to make people trust about our potential, our environment sustainability concern, as well as how we manage those potentials. So, okay, so we are going to talk about this TTDI. TTDI is the World Economic Forum Index that actually, give us, the snapshot on how we are doing globally. In the latest report, Indonesia ranked second in Southeast Asia, sixth in Asia Pacific, and 22nd globally. So the TTDI also highlight our strength. We've achieved a strong ranking. Here we have, number 8 globally for our natural resources, which is a testament to our effort in conservation and sustainability. So here we always looking for ways to get better. This index helps us to pinpoint those areas where we can really make a difference. And okay, so next we're gonna talk about Bali. Bali. I believe that this is our most recognized destination in the world. So Bali has this incredible mix of things that just draws people in. So you've got the friendly locals who always welcome you with open heart, like you can see in the picture, all smiling, everyone's happy there with all the natural and heritage that comes together with how human recognize nature as their important partners. So we call it with Trihita Karana. So you could say Bali is like our tourism capital. It's a major tourism hub, especially for travelers exploring the southern part of Indonesia. So again, talking about Bali popularity. So popularity always comes with a challenge, right? Even if you are popular, you cannot have your private life. So as well as our destination here in Bali, we have to make sure we're taking good care of Bali. It's not just about the tourists, it's about the people who call Bali as a home. So we want to keep it a livable place for the locals, and at the same time, we want to keep it beautiful and welcoming for everyone to visit internationally. It's balancing act, but we are committed to get it right. So yeah, again, about popularity, here you can see that it can be double-edged sword. When too many people visit a place, it can start to feel the pressure. Like I said, when you have high popularity, you are well-known artist or important person. It's like what happened with Bali. Bali definitely felt that pressure. In 2019, over 6 million international visitors comes to Bali only. Not to mention to Indonesia other destination, but to Bali only. So by September this year, Bali has already received nearly 7 million visitors. To be exact, 4.7 million international visitors. And all those visitors can put a strain on resources, right? So think about it: traffic jam, water shortage, overflowing waste, and it can take away this island of gods, this paradise ambience at the end, if we are not doing the right management. So now the government has been keeping a close eye on this to take some of the pressure from, to take off the pressure from Bali. So we've encouraged visitors to explore the other Indonesia destination, because we still have a lot to offer here beside Bali, by spreading out an extended tourist destination, so we can make sure everyone has a great experience and we can protect these beautiful places for the future. So to cope up with this almost over-tourism, potential over-tourism to Bali, we have the other destination, and I will talk about, we are heading to Labuan Bajo, one of our super priority destination. It's a beautiful spot, actually, in East Nusa Tenggara, where the Komodo dragon lives. You have the Komodo dragon in Mandai, right?
Yeah.
So here, actually, in Komodo, we have thousands of Komodo, wild Komodo in Rinca Island, and we have national park here, Komodo National Park. So actually, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's really special. But again, Labuan Bajo is more than just Komodo dragons. We are talking about a lot of the other destination, like crystal clear blue water, amazing underwater scenes, and that really perfect for diving, beautiful coastline, and as well as unique culture. You can see here in the picture. So Now, the government is really focused on making sure tourism in Labuan Bajo benefits everyone. So we have a vision to make this world-class sustainable premium destination where we can create economic opportunities for the local communities so that we can thrive alongside the tourism industry. Here you can see that talking about the Komodo, it's unique here. While this past semester we found that the visitors is jump or rose to 27%, the Komodo dragon population actually increased 7.6% during last year. So that's fantastic actually. This news is fantastic. It gives us a bit hope to have both thriving tourism and healthy ecosystem. So of course, managing this growth hasn't been without challenging, without challenge. So there have been a few bumps along the road, but again, we thriving. So because of this, with popularity comes responsibility, right? So we need to make sure again that Labuan Bajo can handle all that situation that we have love here. So we are super optimistic about Labuan Bajo future. We believe we can make tourism work for everyone, for the local communities, especially for the environment, and then for the visitor who come to experience the wonderful place. And now, talking about the sustainability. Yeah, on recent, previous panel, we talk about sustainability a lot. Here we have blue-green circular economy that actually one of the sustainable tourism concept. So I leave this slide to a question, if any. So we aim for quality tourism for the next future. I think I have to wrap up here and give it back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I like the statistic of 27% increase in tourism and simultaneous increase in number of Komodo dragons also.
Exactly.
I guess it says a lot on total coexistence between nature and tourism urbanization.
All the balance.
The whole balance. Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Oudad, the stage is yours now. Take us through your presentation.
So, hello everyone. I'd like to thank Ram and GSTC for the opportunity. Basically, I would like to speak a little bit before I go and tell you a story about water in the desert. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Orascom. Orascom is a private company. Orascom Development and Hotels is the division, the hospitality division of Orascom Development Holding based in Zurich. What we do is we provide offerings in integrated towns, and we are touristic destinations that are large. I can give you examples. For example, El Gouna, which is a town which is almost as big as a capital city in many parts of the world. We're talking about 37 million square meters with 25,000 residents living there. We also have other destinations in the Swiss Alps, Andermatt. We have Luštica also on the Adriatic in Montenegro, and so on. But I'd like to tell you how the private sector can deal with sustainability, because it's our bread and butter as well. We need to make sure that the Red Sea remains thriving. We need to make sure that our resources are remaining intact. And at the same time, we need to provide for the people who live in our towns. So that's a difficult conundrum. And Ram, I have to say, it doesn't come easy. So when you say that there's a management and coexistence between two systems, it's never been so true as when you start a touristic destination. Because on top of the township, there's also the seasonality of tourism that makes it even more difficult. Because if you want infrastructure, well and good, but you need to take it to the bank as well. So if you pay for it, you need to have enough usage to cash back your investment. So what about the story that we have? Gouna is, as I said, a large piece of land, 37 million square meters, that was comprised in 1987. And it was comprised with the condition that there would be no help from the government when it comes to resources. So take it, make the best out of it, but good luck. So what it means is in 2022, we just developed almost 55% of that piece of land. And when we say developed, we're talking about villas, we're talking about hotels, we're talking about retail, we're talking about hospitals. So we have a lot of anything that sustains life and permanent residency. So, of course, when you're in the desert, you think of water. Water is not available. So what you do is you have to desalinate. But when you desalinate, we also know that brine is an issue. So we need to think also about brine, the life of brine. And then you have to think of irrigation, because you cannot just look at what you have and say, well, desert is poetic. You have tourists coming, you have to make sure that you can also provide for that. So we have major challenges. The first and the foremost is that Egypt is a nation that entered officially last year in the water poverty status. Plus, we're in the desert, not even close to the Nile. We wish we were, but we're not. Then, as I said, there's the brine disposal challenge. Then there's the storage challenge, because over seasons, in winter, we may have excess water, but in summer, we face droughts. So how can we store all that water? That's another challenge. And then we have limited resources, not because only about water. To make water, we are the private sector. So we cannot rely on some riches that are elsewhere in the country. That's us and us alone. And then you have the seasonality. Seasonality that is a challenge for all the tourism sectors, I believe almost all. And this is how to compose with all these challenges to make a story about water. So we started with an integrated water cycle, something that almost everyone does when they are facing an issue, right? So you desalinate. But we started by saying, okay, if we need to dispose the brine, we need to make sure that the brine is sent at the right salinity to the seawater. Otherwise, it will create a pollution in that sense. So we have storage, surface storage, and we get water from aquifers that are carefully selected for the right salinity so that the end product ends up being compatible with water disposal in the sea. Then we make sure also that we have no waste. All the wastewater is converted into treated water and treated water into irrigation. That doesn't help us much with the idea of seasonality. So that helps us with, okay, people come, they use their bathrooms, to put it plainly, and then when they go, we cannot tell the trees, just wait a little bit. Next month, there's somebody coming. We cannot say that. So we have to make sure that actually we have other sources. So we have to be resourceful here, creative. How can we achieve that? So we achieve that by also contacting neighboring development and townships. So we say, okay, you have an issue with infrastructure, we have an issue with water, so you don't have enough sewerage, we can provide sewerage, and then we take that water, treat it, and irrigate with it, all right? And that starts making stuff which are, little by little, after 35 years, we started getting some wholesome, healthy reactions from our own communities, because the community itself starts feeling for what you do, what you develop. So people start saying, okay, why don't we plant a few mangroves? Gouna is the place where the gray mangrove thrives the northmost in the Red Sea. That means that we have the opportunity to create nurseries for mangroves and to push that threshold further. So we started planting mangroves. And for every activity that we have instituted a small contribution for those who come and do business so that we can levy a little bit of money and so that we can plant mangroves. We also went into something that's interesting because we understand that eventually such a big piece of land will use up to 10% of Singapore's water needs at some point. 10% in the desert, and I'm not talking about a place that is in the tropical area, total drought. So how can we achieve at least something that's close to that? So we start changing the way people perceive aesthetics of greenery. So why don't we try endemic species for a change? Why don't we try and see whether endemic desert species, which are maybe less lush and beautiful in the conventional sense, why don't we make something that's really beautiful and unique for our place? And then we started using the storage water because we need that storage water, right? So we started something really selfish. We want the water. So we used the place behind us, and then little did we know, poof, one day we wake up and we found that soaring birds decided to find our ponds as a resting place. And it started, and it kept going, so that it turned out, you can see on the map that there is a fly path which is thick green. This is where all the migratory birds, well, not all, the other one being on the orange path, on the other side of the Red Sea, this is where they go to Africa and from there to Europe. So we're on the highway of the fly path. So this is why we said, well, little did we know, we take no credit for this creativity. But what we did was we put water, and because it's fresh water, and because the interval was big enough and the birds were tired, they saw that and they plunged onto our... So we have an opportunity to actually attract tourists to see those. We have 112 bird species now that came out of our needs to irrigate, not even planned. I can say that. So just to find, this is my last slide. It's a little bit intricate and dry, well, about water, no pun intended. But it shows the intricacies of how we can be resourceful as well. So on the left side, you can see the external contributors, and on the right side, you can see the global impact. In a nutshell, happy that you take photos of that, but in a nutshell, what I can tell you is, to sum up the story of water, we needed the water to have our touristic destination, right? Turns out we're in the desert and we needed to mine soil, desert soil, which has the closest properties than fertile soil, meaning the mineral content. So we mined that. And then we took water, which we provided, spoke about that, and we added another ingredient to the recipe, which is the waste from the sugar refining industry, which is strong in Egypt. We took it and we blend it into our cocktail, and then we irrigate. And I cannot tell you enough how crazy the biomass ends up to be. It becomes something we have in our waste management system, which is also directed, but that's another story, directed at recycling. We have up to 60% of garden trimmings. This is how lush we end up becoming. So in a nutshell, to go back to the theme, the topic of this session, I'd like to say that we came as a corporation. We're here, we want to make money, but at the same time, by doing the right thing, it can become not only sustainable, it can become also extremely interesting on the business side. All you have to do is just look at the genius that you have inside your localities, how you can help the society around you, they can give you the resources that you want, and everyone can thrive. Thank you.
Fascinating. That's fascinating to see an unintended consequence. Usually we talk about unintended consequences which are negative. You know, some urbanization issue and there's a negative consequence. But here you showed us about a positive, birds coming there. I think that's fantastic. Excellent. Let's just take a look at some of the questions here. What strategies can be implemented to support low-income residents? So this is something that's come up in a couple of times. Every time when we talk about urbanization, obviously there's going to be a mix of low income, high income. What do we do as far as low income urban residents? Their livelihood, their water, firewood. Oudad, do you want to take this and tell us, did you face this and what is it that you all did about it in terms of low income households in the region? How did you attend to them?
Well, we have to face, obviously, because, again, we're a touristic destination in a predominantly poor country. So we have to provide, to start with, to our employees. We have, only in my department, there are 2,500 families that depend from the operations for town. So we have to take care of those as well, and we have to integrate totally their needs into the town needs. That's for sure, that's one. And then, obviously, they are large contributors to cutting the seasonality. If you remember, seasonality is a great challenge on us. So whereby what you may see as low-income urban residents who may pose a strain on the infrastructure, they are actually the balancing power in that. So you can also turn this to your advantage. And of course, you have to care for them the same way as per the SDG goals.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's move to the next question. Rahayu, this is for you. Beyond water provisions, what is the strategy the Indonesian government is implementing to engage tourists to take care of Bali's natural environment? Now, this is you spoke about, Bali being God's own place. And we hear a lot about, what's happening there. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, about this strategy of Indonesian government to engage international tourists as well as domestic tourists to taking care of Bali, to avoid Bali as a potential over-tourism destination, right? So actually, it's more to engage the international as well as domestic visitors to taking care of Bali with all the interaction that they do in Bali with the responsible tourism activities. So, for example, there's a lot of package now in Bali. Bali, by the way, Bali have a tourism levy. So that's why to manage Bali destination and keep the natural environment healthy and sustained to be visit for 100 years. So Bali government as well implemented several policy that comes with very good engagement to international as well as tourism domestic tourists. So we promote a lot about quality tourists and responsible tourism package. So people can really interact with, for example, or the living culture that now still, you can see, in Bali. So we also have Trihita Karana concept, which keep the balance between environment and human activities. And then, of course, for the international tourist promotion, we always put a lot of energy to talk about sustainability all over the world. So basically, it's all about the education to visitors in Bali. So that's what we do now.
It's interesting you say that. In fact, Rohaya, I want to ask you, when we talk about, visitors and overcrowding and all that, conflict that happens, therefore, between nature and visitors and the urban systems. How did you all approach that, in your project from the beginning itself? Did you contemplate and ask yourself, is there likely to be too many people coming in here? If they come in, what happens? Did you do that kind of, I know you did an environmental impact analysis, but is there some contemplation that you did in terms of sheer human activity and what that can do?
Yes, the environmental impact assessment does take into account the traffic as well, because we have wildlife around the area. So I think one of the things that we actually took into account was the arrival area. Instead of having just one single arrival area within that 126 hectares, it was split into 2 different areas so that you can disperse the crowd in that sense. And then, so the study also took into account the number of visitors coming in, and then how it will, in what sense it will impact the wildlife around the area, and then did some assessment, some modeling, and then I think based on that, there are some mitigation measures that have been taken. So in terms of how they relocate the entrance as well, the arrival area.
So you did map that well in advance and anticipate the kind of
Yes,
pressure you will have.
mapping. There was some assessment done on that. Yeah.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Oudad, we come back to you on this. Beyond water provisions, has the project looked at impact to local biodiversity due to construction operations? And we heard, in Singapore, how they handle the construction, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then you close construction.
Yeah.
What is it that your experience has been on this?
So there are many things. First of all, to protect biodiversity, let us also mention something that wasn't mentioned before. In the Red Sea, most of people who go to the Red Sea go to see the sea itself, the reefs, the corals, the dolphins, and such. So the first aspect is we established the El Gouna Nature Conservation Society, and together with the community, we do come up with initiatives that, for example, protect with simple actions. We cannot have an unlimited budget, but we still are creative, such as, for example, boating, okay? You want to go snorkeling. So now you cannot throw your anchor anymore. You have to have posts, and you hook to the posts to protect the corals. So these are small initiatives that were made to protect the natural ecosystem. This is what El Gouna Nature Conservation Society does. That's the organization that's involved in the mangrove plantation. And as such, there are places, for example, where we have mangroves naturally occurring. We create a non-edificandi, meaning a non-construction zone for that. We can still afford to have a few areas where we don't want to develop, and we would rather convert into parks. With that said, of course, there's a lot that remains to be made and codified. And honestly, one of the reasons why I came to Singapore is how thorough the legislation is and how codified it is. And that's what drew me, and I had a couple of very interesting meetings as well. So I'd rather have someone else respond to very specific questions related to that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, we all know codification and, like in destination management, we talk about rules and regulations,
Correct.
do's and don'ts on one side. On the other side, we also talk about emotional issues of, pledges, where from your heart you say, you'll do what you have to. But we're seeing a nice mix of that here without having to sort of go into codification. So there's a question for you here, sir. What policies or mechanisms are in place to ensure free distribution of benefits from sustainable tourism within the community? In fact, if you can take this along with, there's also this whole issue of, cross-border. There was another question of, 3-4 countries together, coming together or not coming together, I don't know, but we don't need to get into that. But how does one just manage that whole thing, to ensure that, of course, nature has to thrive, but just the sheer urbanization so that it doesn't come and snuff what happens. How was it managed with 3-4 countries, involved in that? What has been your experience in that?
Yes. Let me combine those. Starting with the management of the 4 countries, like I was saying, for example, Livingstone in Zambia and Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, they have the force. But they also have guests who wants to go to Chome National Park. And what happens, some of them, they will just come as day trippers. They go there during the day and then go back. So now you're kind of losing some money. But where else, we also depend on them also, because people in Katsani also want to see the force. They cross, and those animals also, they move around. So now that's why the countries are working together. They are working on a sustainable tourism program together to say, how does our tourism benefit communities from each side? So in our country, for example, the government came up with an Economic Inclusion Act, because sometimes as a business, it's viable, especially if you have businesses across the region, to buy in bulks elsewhere where it's cheaper. Where else we are saying, no, look at the GSTC criteria for both destination and for hotels and tour operators. It also encourages buy local, support the local industry, improve the livelihoods of the people. So those things, they also come into play and say, as much as you can make a good savings by buying somewhere in bulks elsewhere, one of the means is buy locals, support the local initiatives, programs that could also, because if they don't benefit, they won't support you in the conservation, so in the conservation space. So that is why it's really important for these countries, because CASA will also come up with programs for communities across, because you find that people who live in the border, they are relatives. They are same people. It's only that the other one is staying in another country and the other one is staying in another country, but they are all. So now putting them together, have them work together also helps to also have a better other voice. And they also, government has also introduced things like, it's also in Namibia and in Botswana and Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, they call it campfire, community-based natural resource management, to say, what do we give you in return? Because you also are not benefiting, because not everybody will be employed by the tourism industry. Normally, tourism industry employs younger people, elderly people, or semi-literate people. Even if it employs them, the payments are not that much attractive. But the thing is, how do you turn around their lives to benefit or derive benefits from the operation? Because tourism also depends on.
So did this happen organically? I mean, like the second question says, policies and mechanisms to ensure fair distribution. Does this just happen mechanically, organically, because you all follow the destination criteria, or was it just inbuilt into the culture to saying, let's all help each other in terms of, everybody benefiting from it?
Because
how did it play out eventually?
I don't know whether it was around May, June, somewhere there. All the 5 head of states met as part of CASA. CASA will also come up with programs. I remember I was participating on this, where we were trying to come up with programs of how can we market the region and then also benefit. So now, even the head of states, came together to also endorse the suggestions that comes onto how is this sustainable management and sharing benefits and supporting each other, so that it could also be embraced from that level of our head of states. Because the ministers will meet, and then the head of states. But usually, throughout the CASA, there are working groups around each country, and including communities. So now they work together and come up with programs which are documented and implemented.
Okay, that's interesting. Ayu, I want to put this question to you. How can local communities be involved in maintaining a balance between urban development and natural preservation? In terms of, we always talk about, when there is urban development, local communities are involved, not involved. Of course, we talk about stakeholder management and stakeholder consultation as far as our criteria is concerned, right? What has been your experience, in terms of the local community being involved in maintaining this balance of natural preservation. Do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, like I said before, that for example, we take Bali's philosophy Trihita Karana. Actually, I have to explain that Trihita Karana is maintaining three main focal point actually that really comes with the balance of life. So between urban development and natural preservation in Trihita Karana concept, between Trihita Karana is actually three main focal point. One is the human human relation between human and God, and then human and environment, as well as human to human. So it's all the balancing of life, right? So for example, in Bali, maintaining a balance between urban development and natural preservation usually comes with the local or the community program from the Balinese, for example, here. And then by that, when you want to develop an urban area, so we have to keep the natural development as well with the responsible tourism development here. So again, it's all the ecosystem between environment, social, and cultural, as well as economic, sector. So that's why.
So that's interesting. If there is a cultural ethos that naturally protects everything, then there'll be less conflict between urbanization and natural systems.
Exactly.
Is what you're really saying.
Yeah, because that's the living culture that they have.
Interesting. I want to take this next question. Are there jobs that will be created and ended with the implementation of sustainability? What are the important ones? Tell us from your experience in Singapore, in your development. Are there jobs that started and finished? And how did it go?
Yeah, of course. There are green jobs that are coming up, right? And in fact, the sustainability covers a wide area, right? You can have sustainable food, right? Sustainable accommodation, a hotel, right? Facilities management. So there are many, many green jobs out there. And this is one of the things that the government is also investing, government of Singapore has invested time and money and their grants, and in terms of skill, we have what we call the Skills Future Program to upskill the workforce to go to prepare them for the green jobs. So things like greenhouse gas management, right? How do you calculate carbon accounting? Those are really very technical. And then there are those startups that come up with sustainable food, the research into plant-based foods. Then we also talk about wildlife, that ecology, and then environmental impact assessment is becoming more and more important. Yeah, so there are quite a number of increasing number of jobs relating to ecology. Yeah, because now wildlife, because biodiversity loss, as well as climate, the threat of climate change are the two threats that are facing humanity right now, and that was actually acknowledged at the COP in Glasgow,
the
right?
diversity,
Yeah. So these are where the green jobs are coming. So there are plenty of green jobs coming up.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just told that time's up, so we can't take any more questions. But I thought it was a fantastic session where we saw, magic happening when urbanization does crawl into natural spaces. And we are also seeing how, from examples here, how nature also becomes sensitive to urban sort of living. I think all four of you gave us fantastic insights into how this needs to be managed, and I hope you've given enough food for thought for everybody. I think after sessions like this, we don't go back saying, okay, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. I think what it does is opens our mind for us to contemplate and process this and say, how is it that we can apply it to our own system? So I want to thank the panel very much for your valuable contribution, and thank you for the audience for being here.
Thank you.
A bit of announcements. We wind up for today. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock, the sessions will start. Am I right, Sergio? Yeah, 9 o'clock, the sessions would start. So all of you have a good evening, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. All right? Thank you all. Thank you.